Welcome to the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rosensweet, mom of 3 young people, peaceful parenting coach, and your cheerleader and guide on all things parenting. Each week, we'll cover the tools, strategies, and support you need to end the yelling and power struggles and encourage your kids to listen and cooperate so that you can enjoy your family time. I'm happy to say we have a great relationship with our 3 kids. The teen years have been easy and joyful, not because we're special unicorns, but because my kids were raised with peaceful parenting. I've also helped so many parents just like you stop struggling and enjoy their kids again. I'm excited to be here with you today and bring you the insight and information you need to make your parenting journey a little more peaceful. Let's dive into this week's conversation. Hey, Jonathan and Bonnie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, good to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, for full disclosure, Bonnie, you and I have spoken before. I think probably about 2 or 3 years ago. We spoke briefly.
We've been following you since our kids were little. And attempting peaceful parenting since they were born.
Oh, that's so great to hear. So why don't you just give us a quick intro of your little family?
Absolutely. We have Eloise, our daughter, who's 6. She's a firecracker, very strong-willed, very creative, innovative, a problem solver. She's a leader. And then we have Lucas, who's 4, and he also is strong-willed. And so now we're trying to, navigate 2 kids who are very strong, very emotional, and just needing some help.
All right. And 6 and 4 are not easy ages.
No, we're in the trenches still.
And when they're together, they're compounded.
So 2 feels like 7 when they're together.
Yes, it does. And I think, what am I doing wrong? Is it easier for everyone else? 2 really feels like 1,000,000.
Yeah. No, you know what? I mean, we'll see if there's anything you can tweak as we talk about what the challenges are. But I think one misconception about peaceful parenting is people think, well, if I'm doing it right, then I should have these perfectly well-behaved children who don't cry and don't have tantrums and don't have big preferences. And that's just not true, right? Like, even if you're doing everything, quote, right, small children are, they don't have much life experience. They don't have much emotional maturity or impulse control, and life can still be messy with intense small children, even if you're doing everything, quote, right.
That's so helpful. I feel like I get discouraged often as a mom. Like, is any of this working? I know working is not the main goal, right? We're trying to have a long-term vision for their emotional health and their well-being, but not seeing much fruit of what we're trying to do, it can be discouraging at times.
Totally. I hear you on that. And you're right. It is a long game. So why don't you just give me a little bit of a sense of what your challenges are and how I can support you today?
Okay. I think it's around the word obedience. We're trying not to use punishment or consequences, but it feels like our kids really don't want to go along with anything we suggest. And many times it's like we need to get in the car and leave someone's house. It feels like there's pushback for everything, Sarah. Whether it's like buckle your seatbelt in the car. We have to do it. It's the law. There's just, I'm waiting and waiting, and then I'm assisting. And they're 4 and 6. And, I'm trying to discern, am I having too high of expectations? I try to be patient. We don't have a busy schedule. We're not in activities yet. Like, we have a lot of downtime. Our kids get a lot of attention from both mom and dad. But yet there's still, like you said, these huge emotions, more fighting with each other than we've had before. Our daughter started kindergarten, so she's gone 7 hours a day. And then the little guy is home with me. My 4-year-old's with me 24/7. And so he seems like he's always upset at me. I'm always ruining his life like 20 times a day. He has big language about how he hates everything and I'm a bad mom. I'm trying so hard to rise above and not take it personal, but their words really do hurt me. I think one of the questions I have for you is like, when they're saying mean things and we try not to react big or not yell and, oh, you must be upset. We try to have an empathetic response.
All right, let's start with obedience. I like to reframe that. Obedience doesn't really have a place in the peaceful parenting world, but what I like to reframe that as cooperation, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, how can we work together to get where we need to go? And it can be quite literally, like in the car. We work together to get the seatbelts buckled and get where we need to go. Because obedience is something that is actually like, that would be really convenient if you had an obedient 4-year-old and 6-year-old. But obedience isn't necessarily a character trait that you want your children to have when they're older, right? Because it won't be you they're obeying when they're 14 and 16. It'll be their peers, right? It'll be somebody else. It's not going to be you. It's so obedience is really the wrong goal. And obedience is also, it can get people in trouble too when somebody's telling them to do the wrong thing and that they just go along with it. So I think if we can agree to sort of take obedience off the table as a goal and replace that with cooperation, how does that sound?
That sounds better because they're not doing the obedient thing anyway.
Yeah. And obedience is really like a lot of obedience comes from fear. I better do what they say or else. And it's not that's not really how we want to raise our kids, to be afraid of us.
Yeah. Well, they're not obeying, so they're not afraid of us. So maybe
that's
something's
good
going
news.
well.
There's actually a really great New York Times piece by somebody that I had on my podcast. Her name is Melissa. Now her last name's escaped me, but Melissa Wenner Moyer, I think is her name. Anyways, we'll link to that podcast. But she wrote a book called How to Raise Kids Who Aren't Blankety Blanks. And she had an article, how I found her, she had an article in the New York Times that was like, why your rude child might be a little bit of a good thing. And she talked about how, sometimes when you do raise kids to not be afraid of you, but to speak their mind and stand up for themselves, it can really look like rudeness in a small child, right? But we do want to raise kids with, as you said, that long game of like how we want to raise kids who aren't afraid to say what they think, who aren't afraid to go for what they want. It just is like, frankly, it's inconvenient when they're 4 and 6.
Yes, it feels like it's all against me. I have to try to take it personal. Like this is good in the long run.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, why don't we start with looking at some situations where you're having a hard time getting cooperation, and look at what might be going on. So, do you want to give me? You mentioned leaving friends' houses or getting car seatbelts buckled.
Yeah. Just yesterday, we were at a friend's house. We had been there an hour or two, just playing in their home, and they were building forts and moving couch cushions and having obstacle courses, having a great time. And I gave them a warning, like, we have 5 minutes left, do your last few things. And then when it was time to go, I said, okay, we got to get our shoes on. It's time to go. And they're like, run, hide, hurry, like escape. Let's do another thing. So they make it like a game to escape and to not come. And I'm like, Dad's ready. We got to go eat dinner, And I'm telling them over and over. So then I'm getting worn down. Like, why do I have to tell them over and over? And they're not listening. I'm trying not to get angry, but inside I am, and my friend is there and I'm like, this is embarrassing. And then they'll say, I hate you. Like Lucas will say, I hate you or whatever, because he doesn't want to go. So I'm trying to say, I know it's hard to leave. This is so fun. I hope we can come back, but we have to go right now. It's time. And so then finally, at some point, after all these asks, they come up and we're getting our shoes on. And then we go outside and instead of getting in the car, they want to run across the street to the park. They don't, luckily, but sometimes in the past they have run to the park. And then I have to literally pick them up, 4 and 6. And I get real exasperated often. Mm-hmm. And then I feel a lot of shame and a lot of guilt, like have all this anger towards my kids. And I really want to enjoy them. And I really want to live well right now in my life and not just like hate this season or not be weeping every day.
Oh, Bonnie.
So okay. I've been emotional lately.
Yeah. Well, a couple of thoughts. One thing that this is such a common problem of childhood. I think everyone can relate. They're not wanting to leave the friend's house, right? Yeah. And one thing that I would say to my kids is part of being a good guest is going home when it's time to go. If we're not good guests, our friends are not going to want to invite us back over to their house. And I think so it sounds like maybe having a talk like that before you go. So for your next play date, I've been thinking about how hard it is to have to leave. And, it's I think it's probably a little bit annoying for our friend's mom when they want to have dinner and you two are still running around trying to play and you won't leave. And you know what? Then you can say part of being a good guest is leaving when it's time to go without a big fuss. And so if we are going to go to their house, I need you two to try to be good guests. And what does that look like? And get them to repeat that back to you. So this is called like setting the expectation, right?
So do we ask, like, can you do that? Do you think you can do that when it's time to go?
Yeah, sure. Ask that. And maybe you can even practice it at home. You can say like, okay, let's pretend that we're over at, Billy and Sally's house and it's time to go. And you really don't want to go because you're having so much fun, and you can tell them it's okay to be upset about going. I'm not saying you can't be upset, but you do need to come when it's time to go. And I'll give you the 5-minute warning. And then it's going to be time for us to go. So really setting that expectation about being a good guest. And I would not feel bad about leaning into she's not going to invite us back if we are poor guests. She's not going to want us to come back, because that's a limit that people might actually set. Like, oh, I'm not going to have them over. They turn into holy terrors when it's time to go. Right. I don't know if your friend would actually do that, but we don't need to tell your kids that. Right.
Yeah.
So that is part of like teaching social norms, and it's okay to be upset. But it's not okay to go and run away from me. And if you do that, when we go over there today, we're going to have to think about maybe not going over there for a little while. Right. And so, and some people listening might be saying like, oh, that sounds like a punishment. If she says, we're not going to go there if you can't leave nicely. And I'm not, again, I'm going to lean in. I'm not saying they can't be sad or upset or even cry or even say, I hate you, as long as they're leaving. Right. Like, I actually don't mind. I know it's hard for you, and we'll talk about this. I don't mind if Lucas says, I hate you, you're the worst mom ever, as long as he's putting his coat on and walking out the door. Right. Okay. So some people might say like, well, how come that's not a punishment? So a punishment is to make kids feel bad or to scare them that they will feel bad, like a threat or a punishment, so that they'll cooperate with you. Right. And so we are often we're angry or, otherwise dysregulated when we're making those threats or saying like, that's it, no TV when we get home, or whatever the punishment's going to be. So we're dysregulated. So our tone is, not good, not compassionate and warm. And often if we're doing a punishment, it's to make them feel bad, to scare them, to manipulate their behavior, right? But what differentiates that, what we're talking about here, is a limit. So the limit is, if you can't leave your friend's house when it's time to go, even if you're upset and calling me saying I hate you, then we're not going to be able to go there anymore for a little while. So that's the limit. And the difference is the tone is kind and compassionate. Oh my goodness, you're having such a hard time. We're going to have to take a little break, going over to our friend's house. That's our tone. And our intent is just to help reinforce the limit.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And the buckling the seatbelts feels like a struggle every time we get in the car.
Yeah. So what typically happens? Well, let's just like tie up the loose ends on the other part. So next time you're going to a friend's house, I want you to prepare earlier in the day or the day before, talking about the expectations, about being a good guest, practicing what that's going to be, getting them to make a deal with you, right? Like pinky swear, we're going to try our hardest to leave when it's time to go. And maybe you even tell your friend to say something like, hey, I'm really, let me think about this for a second. Get her in on it somehow. To say like, I am so looking forward to seeing what good guests you two are today, or something like that.
Okay. Or I need you to go time or something.
Yeah, sure. I need you to listen to your mom. That's what I would say. Like, you want to be the person who's the leader, but I'm looking forward to you listening to your mom when it's time to go. Because when it's time to go, it's because we're going to be eating dinner or whatever it is.
That's good. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think sometimes we get caught up in thinking that, kids listening also includes them not being upset. So I just want to make sure that you're clear on, they can be upset just as long as they're coming into the car.
Okay. Yeah. That'll be big progress if we see some.
Okay. So the seatbelts, like what typically happens with the seatbelts?
It's mostly Lucas. He's 4. And I don't know if like his car seat is harder than the other car seat, like legitimately, because he can buckle the top, but it seems like he can't buckle the bottom, but he used to be able to buckle it. So I don't know if he's just needing me to be nurturing in that moment.
What's the problem with doing it yourself?
I usually get in the car and then I'm like, okay. And then he's like, Mom. And then I have to get back out.
Okay.
And
so when my oldest son was little, when he was like 5, every single night we'd get him ready for bed. He'd get into bed, teeth brushed, everything tucked in. And then he'd call downstairs, I'm hungry. I want some cereal. And it was driving me crazy. And I was talking to my dad about it. And I was like, every single night he wants some cereal after he's already all ready for bed. And my dad said, why don't you just give him some cereal before he brushes his teeth and gets in bed? And I was like, oh, that's such a good idea. And so we started to bring cereal into our, his bowl of his bedtime snack into our nightly routine. and the problem was solved. So I'm seeing maybe you could do something similar to that is before you get in the car, you just put Lucas in his car seat and do up his seatbelt.
Okay, I'll do it. You make it sound so easy, and I'm like, I have all these frustrations.
Well, this is the problem. I know you can see me, listeners can't, but I'm holding up my hands up, a foot away from each other. We have, on the one hand, we have our expectations. Your expectation was that Lucas gets in, buckles himself in while you're getting in, right? Then you have the reality over here, which is that he's not buckling himself. He wants you to do it for whatever reason, and he's only 4. And as you know, you just said this, kids sometimes experience us doing things for them as nurturing, right? Even though he can do it for himself. I'm sure that your husband can make his own coffee, but I bet you make him coffee occasionally.
He makes mine every day.
Okay. So you can make your own coffee, Bonnie, but he makes your coffee for you, right? And that's like, what if I said to him, you should never do anything for your wife that she can do for herself? That's terrible, right? Like that
would not be good.
No, not good for your relationship. So sometimes we do things for people that we love because we're showing nurturing. So for whatever reason, he wants you to put his seatbelt on him. So just do it, right? So anyways, that gap between expectations and reality, sometimes we can get stuck in thinking like my expectation is right. So we always want to look at it like, okay, well, maybe my expectation is off. And it could be that sometimes we decide my expectation is fine, but my child still needs support to close that gap between expectation and reality.
And is it pretty normal that they just want help with everything, whether that's, I need water, I need a rag, I need this? Do we kind of do all those things for them? Sometimes one of my frustrations is like, golly, I just want to sit down and eat my food. I'm getting hungry. And like, they're just needing.
You're totally allowed to say, sweetheart, I'm going to eat my soup while it's still hot. If you still want me to get in, so say he can get his own water and he wants you to get him water. I'm going to eat my soup while it's still hot. I'll get you the water after, or you can get it yourself right now.
That's helpful. Yeah. Because I feel like there's a ton of those things where I'm like, I'm doing it for them, but is this like teaching them that I'm just going to do everything for them, that there's not responsibility? Can we kind of shift a little bit to helping around the house and responsibilities? My kids are very creative and they make big messes, but they're allergic to cleaning up.
So it's such a great question. And I have such a different view for being so much further out, right? Because I was just thinking, I keep meaning to like make some videos about this. But the other day I realized I always tell this story about how my daughter, when she was, I think 6 or 7, we were heading out to the bus stop and I was carrying her backpack. My husband happened to be leaving at the same time and looks at me and says, why are you carrying her backpack for her? She's 7, she can carry her own backpack. And I was like, yeah, she can, but she likes me to carry it. And, I don't mind carrying it. It's fine. And I knew that because kids have such a strong natural drive for independence, that she would be carrying her own backpack soon. And, by the next year, she would be like, Mom, I can carry my own backpack. I'm not a baby, And I was thinking about that. So she's 16 now. She'll be 17 in a few months. She will not let me carry a single bag. Like anytime we're like walking from the car or, we walk to the store, she's like, Mom, let me carry those. Like even if she's totally weighed down and I am carrying nothing, she will not let me carry a single thing. So it really is like, it goes further than independence to like kids who want to help you, right? Who want to do things for you because you've modeled that. And I'm not saying that you need to be a martyr, Bonnie, and that like you need to, get up from your lunch every 30 seconds to get something for somebody. But if you can do it and you don't mind doing it, then do it. If you don't want to do it and you say, I can do it for you after I finish eating. If you want it right now, you can get it yourself, honey. Right? You can do that also.
Yeah. And then just put my earplugs in for the big meltdown.
Or, just I know it's hard to wait. I'll get you that water. And that example is a little bit silly because, you might rather get the water than have him crying for the whole time that you're eating your soup. So you'll have to decide what you want to do, right? But you get the idea.
Yes.
We also don't want to be rigid about it because there's also a point where he might realize, well, she could really easily do this thing for me. And now we're just in a power struggle because she won't, So it's more of an art than a science. You don't have to do everything, but also like use common sense if it seems a little bit silly that you're refusing to do something that's easy.
And then like with chores and responsibilities at home, how do you begin teaching that?
Well, I do have a whole podcast episode about that we'll link to in the show notes about raising helpful kids. But the big idea is that you want to invite them to join you in, tidying up. Also watch for when they want to do something. Make sure that you're letting them do it. Like if they want to carry something, even if you think it's too heavy, or they want to sweep, even if they do a bad job, make sure you're letting them do the helping, even if it's not the exact helping that you want. Because what you really want to do is when they are being helpful, you want to really make them feel good about it. So like, oh my goodness, thank you so much for carrying that. It was so heavy. Or, wow, you swept the floor. Look how nice it looks in here, even if they missed a whole bunch of spots. So
Yes.
people help because it feels good. You could force somebody to clean something up, but that's not going to turn them into a helpful person. So really like watch when they are being helpful, reinforce that, invite them to join you. And when my kids were little, they hardly did anything in terms of that, I couldn't say like, okay, everybody clean up the room. And it was like clean however many minutes later. But I would say, all right, time for a 10-minute tidy. We'd put that's what we called it, a 10-minute tidy. We'd put on a timer, we put some music on, and probably I did most of it. But still, it was like a family thing that we did.
Yes, we try to do that. Eloise made a chore chart the other day with 3 pages and all these columns. And she said she needed to do a chore every day, and her and Lucas. So she started telling them what they were doing. And I was like, we haven't done chores. Like, do we need to? But I do sometimes get overwhelmed with the mess in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably just need to set limits in advance. Is like, if you get this out, and I say that, like, if you guys take all these cushions off, you have to put them back. But they always lose their energy when it's time to put those cushions.
Well, you might have to do it together.
Yeah.
Right?
Always.
Yeah. And
For
that is still a totally reasonable expectation for 6 and 4, that you still have to help them with those things.
Okay. That's helpful. I just feel encouraged getting your perspective from someone who's done this, who can see like even your daughter's story and see like, okay, it's not going to be forever. I'm not just enabling them to take advantage of me, and I'm not going to feel like a slave forever.
Yeah. Well, though it's really hard. I mean, I had another story too of my son. My 19-year-old son was coming home from work, and I asked him to go to my favorite takeout place to get my favorite jerk chicken. And it took him let me put it this way, because of where we live and traffic, he was home an hour later because he went to get me my jerk chicken that I love. And he didn't mind at all. I was like, are you sure you don't mind? He's like, Mom, I said I would. Like, it's fine. And, I thought back to like all of the things that I did for him when he was little. And I think it really does work that way. Like there's this great article that we love called Model Graciousness, which is basically like be the person that you want your kids to be, right? And it does take time for you to see those things.
That is beautiful. It is hard to like work on ourselves and our reactions and try to stay calm. What advice would you give me as I'm still in these young ages to not get, so angry or exasperated, or take care of myself,
Well, give me an example that might make you feel angry or exasperated.
I guess the noise level. I do use headphones a lot.
Good.
He's in a screaming and growling phase. And then sometimes, like I said, they'll come at each other with those mean words, like, I'm not your sister, or, I'm not your brother, or just kind of the meanest thing they could think of in their minds to each other. And that kind of gets me fired up. It's one thing if it's at me and I'm like, oh, he's lashing out. He's, in his lizard brain. He doesn't mean it. If it's at your sibling, I'm like, we don't call names. So besides saying like, we don't call names, there's no name calling. You can say you're upset, but they keep doing it. So
yeah, it's kind of an unenforceable limit unless you like pull out the duct tape, which of course I'm not suggesting that. And so what do you want to do is just keep on trying to model and reinforce like, hey, I hear you're really upset with your sister. Is there another way you can tell her that? What else could you say instead of calling a name? So I would work on that and just keep, they still have very little impulse control. Sounds like they have big feelings. I mean, you might want to look at what's causing all of the disagreements, or why do they get so upset with each other?
Yeah. And sometimes I don't know which kid to go to. So if they're being loud and angry at each other or fighting over whatever, if someone hits someone, like, do I go to the kid that was injured or the kid that's kicking and hitting?
Usually, I mean, our sort of guideline is to go to the injured person first. However, if the person who's done the kicking and hitting is super dysregulated and you need to tend to them first, you could just do a quick tend to the injured one. Oh my goodness, I'll be right with you. Looks like your sister needs a little bit of help or whatever. That's, again, it's one of those things like the situational, like put whip fire is the biggest.
Yes. That's what I'm trying to do.
Mhm.
And it's hard to know, like, do they need more time apart? I think Eloise is pretty jealous of Lucas because she's at school all day. She misses being home with mom. She misses the attention, maybe just the relaxation of being home all day. And she's working hard. So after school, she's exhausted and she has some big feelings. And it seems like she'll come and just take something from him or instigate something.
Mhm.
And then it kind of begins,
Yeah.
So-
So you always want to remember trying to intervene in a neutral way, if possible. And I would also go back to the root of that. If she's, you said she's jealous of him and she misses you, is there a way that you can do? I mean, I don't know what Jonathan's schedule is like if he's not around after school, if you two can do like the divide and conquer sort of thing, or.
He's not home really till dinner. We try to do their special times, like in the evenings. But in the times I've gotten her right after school and said, like, I have something special, just you and me, it's made a world of difference.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
not really doable because usually Lucas is always with me too. So
Yeah.
I don't get to like pour into her special cup
Right.
until when he's home.
Right. So you might want to just find some little, like you can find little ways to connect, like even, just giving her like a big hug. I missed you so much when you were at school today, and whispering something sweet in her ear, and, trying to just reconnect that way every day when she comes home so that she just feels special. And even if you can't get time away from him, I don't know, are your kids allowed to watch screens?
We're doing it now, and this is a big privilege. We only do about 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they get pretty dysregulated, and I just would rather them be doing other things.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I was just thinking, 4 is right on that cusp of like, he's probably too little to leave you alone if you try to do special time with no backup. However, you could save his screen time. You have to decide which is worse, but you could save his screen time for when Eloise gets home and he can watch a show while you have some 20 minutes of special time with Eloise. You could try that.
Yeah, she would just want to watch the screen.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe that won't work then.
But that's good. Yeah, I think even the words of like, I missed you when you're at school. I can't wait till we have special time tonight. What are we going to make? Like looking
Perfect.
forward to that special. She likes to do art.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I can't wait to see what we're going to make together or something.
Perfect. Yeah.
Just
Just making her, really just trying to connect with her and making her feel special when she gets home.
That's good. That's so helpful. Do you have anything, Marie?
One thing that I've been thinking about is Lucas is a morning person and he's up very early, usually to the tune of 5:30-ish. And Eloise has a hard time going to sleep until
Oh, the worst of both, worst combination.
8:30. I mean, the last, week to 10 days, she's been like 8:30. She's still coming out of her room and whatever, which ends up meaning we have very little personal time or even time together because, he's up first thing in the morning and she's up late at night. And I think the evening time is the most difficult because we've started trying to back their bedtime up to where he's basically exhausted and crashes. And we always divide and conquer when we're both home, which is usually like 6 nights a week. But then it's like she won't go to sleep and keeps coming out of her room. And
we lay with her for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we will have been in there for 45 minutes and we're like, dude, we're about to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And we've done nothing for ourselves or with each other. Like, how do we manage this? Because I think the evening time is going to be more malleable than early in the morning.
Yeah. You can't make people sleep in, really.
Right.
Have you ever thought about, well, first of all, do you think she's getting enough sleep? Even if has a little bit of a later schedule? Like, or do you want her to go to sleep earlier?
We don't wake her up for school. We
Okay.
just let her wake up. She doesn't do an alarm.
Okay, good.
So sleep till like 7.
Okay.
9 to
One thing, sometimes kids have trouble falling asleep because they still have a lot of pent up energy from the day. Maybe you could try roughhousing with her before, like as maybe your special time with her. Try some roughhousing. I know that sounds counterintuitive, But my experience is about 90% of kids do much better when they've had a chance to get out the last of their physical energy and get regulated. So that's one thing that might help her fall asleep. Like maybe before you do the jammies and brush teeth, so it's not the very last thing that she's doing, but do some good laughter and roughhousing with her before bed.
That would be awesome because both of them have so much energy from the moment they wake up.
Yeah, they wake up at 100 miles an hour, both of them.
It's like you're giving them coffee or something. The other thing that I was thinking of is if she has trouble falling asleep, and it might be that she's staying and keeps getting up because she's bored, right? Like there's nothing worse than lying there. Like I can't sleep. There's nothing to do. It's dark. I mean, not that I've had that feeling since I had kids. I fall asleep like, in 10 seconds flat. But what I find really helped two of my kids who had trouble falling asleep was listening to an audiobook while they fell asleep. So I don't know if you have a way that you can put an audiobook in her room. And of course, not that she can access the screen, like you play it on Bluetooth or something like that.
Yeah, it's not a screen, just the listening.
Yeah. So maybe just have her listen to an audiobook and say, Daddy and Mommy need some time together. And we're going to don't make it sound too fun. Maybe you say you have work to do or you have to do the dishes or something. You're tired. Yeah. Something that's not like, oh, I'm missing out if I don't keep coming out. But, we'll lie with you and then it's your job to stay in your bed. Again, we're coming back to the setting expectations, right? And you need to get your sleep so that you are happy and that you grow. Did you know that you grow while you're sleeping? And that's actually true, right? The growth hormone is secreted when people sleep. So you have to get a big night's sleep so that you can grow up to be big and tall. And I know it's hard to lie there. So what we're going to do is give you an audiobook that you can listen to so you're not bored, so you don't need to come out.
She will love that. And she'll love the growing thing too. She's so tiny.
Yes.
She thinks if you're taller that you're older, and she wants to be the boss and the leader.
Yes.
Totally. When my sister's always been, she's younger than I am. She's always been taller. And when we were younger, she used to always say, guess who's older? Guess who's older? Because they would always say her because she was taller. But she stopped doing that, I think, in our 30s. Because now she doesn't want anyone to say she's the older one.
That is cute. When Eloise was 4, she's like, Mom, I feel older than I am.
Oh my goodness. That's hilarious.
How old do you feel? She's like 8.
That's so funny. She's an old soul, it sounds like.
Yes. Well, thank you. This is so helpful, Sarah.
You're so welcome. And so just remember that setting the expectations piece. And if you find that, say, you do all of that for leaving the friend's house and they still don't leave, you might say, we're going to have to take a couple of days break and then we'll try again, right? It's not to make anyone feel bad or punish them. It's just like, you know what? We'll try again in a few days and then don't let it be too long. Like we're not like artificially trying to like stretch it out, and then say, okay, do you think you can try? Can we try again? And practice it. I have had people tell me that it has immediate success, but I also don't want to like set you up that it's going to necessarily work on the first time, but it might, but just keep trying that.
Okay.
I think if they have the buy-in, beforehand, like, can we do this? Yes. I think it will work.
Good. All right. Well, good luck. And we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks and see how it goes.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, Bonnie. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
So how have things been since the last time we talked?
Well, I have good news on bedtime. I think we told you before that our son Lucas was waking up really early in the morning. And then Eloise, our daughter, was like not going to bed until pretty late.
Right. So you had like on both ends, no time for yourselves.
And that was giving no margin for my husband and I. So we started roughhousing like very intentionally every night. Like sometimes our daughter, she would want to draw or something, but we've just really been engaging her with roughhousing. And we've seen how that has helped so much with her being able to fall asleep quicker.
Good.
We tried the audiobooks and it seemed for her like it was keeping her awake. Maybe they were too engaging of stories. I got like longer classic novels and she was just wanting to finish the next chapter.
Actually I have a tip about that. And actually I should have said that before. Maybe have her listen to things that she's already listened to, like, because it won't be, because you're right. It is engaging if you're listening to something that you really like and you don't want to fall asleep because you want to know what happens next. But maybe I don't know if she listens to audiobooks when she plays or anything like that. But maybe there's something that if she already knows the story or something that you've read or anyhow, you could, if the roughhousing has been enough to fix it, great. But if you still feel that she needs to stay in bed, have her listen to something that she's already listened to or music.
Yes, we do music. So that's a beautiful, reminder, like something she knows by memory, a story she knows that she's not like curious to find out what happens next. We'll definitely try that if she's just wide awake one night.
Okay, so the roughhousing has helped though?
Yes, it's helping so much.
Good.
Yeah.
That's
And then
awesome.
my husband, like he's usually here in the evenings, but even when he's not here, I try to do it. And I say
Good.
I'm love housing because I'm not as rough as dad, but I'm
Uh-huh.
still trying to get them giggling. I think you
Good.
mentioned that even like with Lucas, because it seems that he has a lot of rage and he wants to scream and cry. And even like yesterday, I was noticing he's laughing like so much. And I think that's like a way that we forget that he is releasing those emotions maybe through laughter.
100%. Yeah, 100%. That's amazing. Yeah, because a lot of times kids will, like grown-ups, like we don't like to feel the hard feelings, right? And we sort of kind of avoid them, but then our backpacks get so full and they end up like, we end up being more explosive, right? So if you can like get the top layer of those feelings out of the backpack, then it's going to make him less explosive, right? For sure. And you know what? I love that you're saying this in a public forum because I can't tell you how many times I recommend roughhousing to people, or Corey does. And I don't think people do it because I don't think they think it's going to make that big of a difference.
Yeah, it does. And the laughing with him really does. I get so serious or just so like on task, like get through the routine, have the dinner. But when I can allow myself, even if it's 5 to 10 minutes, to just be over the top silly, like something in them gets so released. They think it's just hysterical that I am being this goofy, character or whatever. And it's actually fun for me too. It helps me to not take stuff so seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome because I think you're right. It does affect us too. Like, of course, because you have a backpack with feelings and tensions and stresses in it. So it's helping you get all of those feelings out too.
Yes. I think what I noticed since my last talk with you was just my own personal health. Like I was struggling with some fatigue and exhaustion, and I needed to, really take care of my health. And I know you have some podcasts on it, but that's been a huge help for me with parenting, like taking note of what I need
Hmm.
and really not apologizing if I need to lay down, like whether at the park and I don't want to play in that moment, saying, no, my body's tired, so I'm going to sit right here and watch you, or whatever that is, and not like feeling guilty, but really taking notice of my needs. And I guess just tending to myself a little more has given me more margin, to give back to my kids.
That's huge. I love that. You know what else, Bonnie? Oh, well, first of all, I'm going to tell you a funny game that I just read about yesterday, and I had heard of this before, but I saw it on someone's feed yesterday. It's called "What's on My Butt," or bum in Canada, as we say. And you like lie on the couch and close your eyes and have your kids like put something on your butt and you have to guess what it is. But think about it. You're lying down on the couch the whole time or on the floor or on your bed or whatever. So it's a great
That's
game that you
great.
can play when you're tired. You can just like lie
We're
on the
going to do it.
couch. So what's on my butt?
That is
The other
hilarious.
thing I wanted to say though was that I think last time after we hung up, I thought, oh, I didn't really get to address this, what talked about in the beginning, which is how hard you are on yourself. And so that I love that you're sort of being more aware of your wellness and your needs because and as we said before, I have talked to you before, and I know that you do tend to be extremely hard on yourself. And it's so
Yeah.
important to not, feel like you have to be perfect or, and to feel like give yourself a little bit of grace.
Yes. I even like got with a friend this week and she stays home with her 5 kids, and we just had coffee and we encouraged each other like we're doing good, we're doing hard things and it's important. And just we don't hear a lot of encouragement if you're a parent
Yeah.
that stays home and you're working day and night. Like nobody's thanking you for
Yeah.
all the sacrifices and just all the meals and the diaper changes or whatever you're doing. It's so hidden and it can feel discouraging. So even just like encouraging myself, like, okay, like focusing on the good moments. Like even so simply, the other day I hit my head like really hard. I was in the closet and I came up and it was
Oh.
a it was a knot for several days. So I'm like hollering and crying. Both of my kids came running to me. Mom, do you need an ice pack? Mom, and they're hugging and kissing
Oh.
me. And I need to take time to like savor those moments where, hey, they're like showing signs of empathy and compassion.
Hmm.
Like those are no small things for a 4 and 6-year-old to be able to care for someone else, right?
Hmm. Yeah, the
So
beautiful thing is that the things that you do with your kids when they're little, as they, I mean, and I'm on the other side of that, right? With like grown up or almost grown up kids. And you do see all of that kindness and, the kindness modeled back to you. It's really lovely that just what goes around comes around. But you know what? Just to go back for a second of what you said about the hardness of being at home with kids, not only is it hidden everything that you do in a lot of ways, but I used to try to explain it to my husband, and I was like, imagine if you're at work and all of your performance reviews are just bad. Like, I hate this food. Why are you so mean? Why can't we do this?
yes,
It's like, when you're working at a job, you often get a lot of positive feedback, right? Oh, good job on that report that you did, or, the customer was really happy or whatever. But when you're at home with kids, it's often really negative, all the stuff that you hear. So it can be really
yes,
downtroddening.
yes. So what are your recommendations if we do just hear how we're ruining their lives 10
Yeah.
times a day, you know?
I used to try to just appreciate myself more, like try to get a sense of like the bigger picture and what I'm trying to do and just like try to appreciate myself. And yeah, they might think the food that I made is gross, but I enjoyed the food that I made, or I know that it's providing them energy. They mostly would eat what I made, but of course they would have rather had like chicken fingers and
Every
French
day.
fries or whatever.
Yeah.
But I would just try to appreciate myself a lot more. I probably, if I had it to do over again, I might have tried a little bit harder to get my husband to, you know, have the domestic workload and emotional workload be seen a little bit more, because I don't think I did a very great job at that. But, I don't know. We're going into another territory here. I keep meaning to do a podcast about that, but I think I just would appreciate myself more.
That's good. That's huge. We don't take time to do that maybe as much as
Yeah.
we should, you know?
Yeah. And I think also I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I always used to think about like, okay, when the kids are older, things will be easier, or when they're sleeping through the night, or when this, or when that. And I think I was really future focused. And maybe 10 years into my mothering, I had kind of this like a bolt of awareness of like this moment that you're living in right now could be like your last moment. Right. So I started to tell myself, I had this slogan where I would say, this is it. Like, this is the life that you're living, and stop looking to the future for things to be better and try to find something about the moment that you're in to appreciate. And
I
that helped a
love
lot too.
Preach, Sarah. I love that. Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm like, I have this burning desire to enjoy like my actual life, like right
Hmm.
now, not
Hmm.
if anything changes or if anything was different, it's hard. It feels like there's the, discouragement or like you said, being at home and hearing what they don't like, but what can I focus on or be grateful for or notice and just like savor that goodness,
Yeah.
each day,
Yeah.
a small cup of tea or something,
Yeah.
the sunshine or being able to be at the park or something.
Totally. And also, I think when you are at home with kids, like you mentioned that you have a friend who has kids, try to, if you can give each other breaks, like try to not lose sight of you and what you like to do. I think you play guitar, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
I do. And
Um,
I'm happier when I get just 10 minutes to play
yeah.
guitar at some point in the day or
Yeah.
evening.
So make sure you don't lose sight of the things that make you like, who is Bonnie? What did you like to do before kids? Try to, obviously our lives are different after kids, but try to think of like who you are outside of a mother.
I love that. And not feel guilty for date nights or time alone. Those
100%.
things go a long way, at least for
Yeah.
me personally, just a little time out shopping, even though I'm trying to be on a budget.
I haven't fact checked this, but I just heard on a podcast that a predictor of a child's like mental health and well-being is the happiness of their mother.
Wow.
Hmm.
That makes me want to be so happy for their sake.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's so
So
cool.
taking care of yourself is not selfish. Like if the only reason you do it is to raise your kids who are happier and healthier, then let that be your inspiration.
That's going to be my mantra now. I'm going to be like, I'm doing all this, self-care for you, honey.
Exactly. I'm taking time away from you for you.
Yeah, that's a beautiful reminder because we do feel guilty for all sorts of things that we shouldn't,
Hmm.
Taking care of ourselves is so important. So thank you
Hmm.
for helping me to see that again.
Yeah. And now you're going to have a recording of yourself saying that. So you're going to have to do it. You'll remind yourself. Okay.
Sounds
So
good.
before we started recording, you told me that one of the main things that we talked about, which was leaving friends' houses, you actually haven't had a chance to try that out yet. So I guess that's something that, if you let me know, if you do end up trying it, well, I don't know, add a little postscript onto this podcast or something. But is there anything else that you wanted to catch us up on, or anything else that you still are finding challenging that we talked about?
I asked my husband this morning, is there anything last minute questions? And he was saying, like, it just seems that our kids push back on every single suggestion. I was like, she'll probably say that's a healthy sign.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, when you want to shift away from your goal is not obedience, right? Your goal, and I think we
Yeah.
talked about that. Your
Or
goal
even
is, yeah.
like you suggest it and you never want to go along with it.
Our goal, like we want to shift away from obedience and compliance. Our goal is cooperation, right?
Mhm.
Teamwork and cooperation. Like that's the huge shift of peaceful parenting, is that compliance and obedience are not what our goals are, but our goals are teamwork and cooperation. And so, yes, pushing back on things is, it shows kids who aren't afraid of you, which is really great. Shows kids who are gonna, like, think about when they're teenagers and grown-ups, and they're not going to be afraid to speak their minds and say what they want and say what they need. And if somebody suggests something that they do that they don't feel comfortable with, they're going to be like, I don't know about that, right? So
Mhm.
this is it's inconvenient when they're little, but as they get older, it's such a good character trait and such a powerful strength.
So if we need them to do something, whether that's leaving, a friend's house or leaving the park or whatever that is it changing our language to that more cooperative invitation for them or?
Well, I think it's trying to help them understand the big why. Like, remember last time we talked about we're going to leave like good guests because we want our friends to invite us back, right?
Yes.
Or we need to get to bed so that our bodies get enough rest so that we have energy for tomorrow, and that we grow, because we grow when we're sleeping, and so that mom and dad can get a good night's sleep so that we are not cranky mom tomorrow or cranky dad. I used to say that to my kids. I'm like, if I don't get enough sleep, I'm going to be like cranky mom tomorrow. And
Yeah,
if you want like happy, fun mom who wants to play with you, you need to go to sleep so I can go to sleep.
that's good. And even like picking up the house, I feel like they have been more cooperative, maybe because we were putting that time in with roughhousing, or being silly. And it doesn't feel like such a demand. It's like, okay, we're all going to do this so we can do something else. Like, we got to
100%.
pick up this room so we can roughhouse. Like, we can't roughhouse if there's little Legos on the floor.
Yeah.
So maybe that's helping them to be cooperative because they see like what's going to come after that. I
Yeah,
don't
the
know.
big why. And
Yeah.
also, while connection is not a magic wand that makes kids instantly do everything we say, when kids feel connected, they do feel like more cooperative. They do want to cooperate with you more.
Yeah. And then we've been buckling Lucas in his car seat. We've not really asked him. We're just doing it for him.
Great. Oh,
So
that's right. That's something else we talked about, right? Was you were like,
yeah.
and I'm like, just buckle it.
Yep. So we're buckling him and both my husband and I, and that's been going great. We're not having any issues there. And then after school, I try to like, whether it's pick up Eloise or just tell her like how much I missed her, because I think we talked about sometimes she instigates and like she's really out of sorts after school.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have just one-on-one time with her because I have both kids for a while. So I try to just kiss on her, love on her, and tell her how much I missed her, or I want to do something special with her later, for special time.
Right.
And that's making a difference. It really is. It seems so small. It seems like it wouldn't, but it is.
Yeah. That's the whole thing with delighting in a child, or delighting in whoever you're delighting in, is it's so easy to do, and it makes such a huge difference. Like, really, the hardest part is remembering to do it, right? But you can do it without any extra energy or time, like just building it into your daily routine of that, as you said, loving on her. I just love it.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. I'm feeling encouraged. Thank you so
Good.
much.
You are so welcome. Thank you for the update. And please let me know the next time you go to a friend's house how it went.
Okay, I will.
Okay. Thanks, Bonnie.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found this conversation insightful and exactly what you needed in this moment. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Remember that I'm rooting for you. I see you out there showing up for your kids and doing the best you can. Sending hugs over the airwaves today. Hang in there. You've got this.